I now have also 7 authors that I'm mentoring for them to do their books. I want to see their stories come out, and they all 7 of them have great stories, and just to be there for them, just holding space. I'm not writing their books for them. I just encourage them and give them tools that I learned. And also, we've got a new great-grandbaby, so I've got 2 great-grandchildren that we'll hopefully be spending more time with, and more traveling. I never know where I'm going to meet somebody or what's next, but I plan on being around here for a lot longer. So more trips to Europe. We want to go to Poland in 2026 and stay over there. So yeah, do you know what? You don't have to stay where you think you have to be. When they've diagnosed you with PTSD, people think that's the end of your life. No, it might just be the beginning.
Hey, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an amazing guest on the show today. And what I love is my guest is here in Canada, which makes me super happy. It's a little colder where she is compared to where I am, but we're here together to talk about her journey as an author. And Janet and I have crossed paths in the past, and I'm so happy to have her on the podcast. And it's great to hear her story as an author. So Janet, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So today you house sit, so you go around all over the place, taking care of people's loving homes while they travel and do things. And what a great way to spend this chapter of your life. I love this. But today, right now, where are you and where are you going next?
We're in Winnipeg, Manitoba right now. And we live in Alberta. That's where our home is. But we're in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And our next one is in Holland. But Holland, Manitoba. I don't know how many people they have, but it's quite a bit less than where it would be if we went to Holland. Maybe 500 people.
There you go. I love it. How did you guys both get into this as a couple to go around and start taking care of people's homes? I love the idea.
Well, it sort of happened by, I got stranded in Seattle in a snowstorm. I was on my way back from training with Jack Canfield, and my cousin's in Seattle, and I thought, okay, I'll just have a layover, spend the night, and then come home, right? And it snowed. And in Seattle, if anybody's been to Seattle, it snows in Seattle, everything quits. No planes fly, no trains go, no buses go, nothing. They don't clean their sidewalks, they don't clean their roads. Anyway, so I ended up being there for 2 days, and I said to my cousin, I should really find a house sit nearby here and come and write my book. And she says, oh, you could stay with me. And I says, yeah, right. You work from home, and we would get nothing done. And she was a graphic designer for a company and did their newsletter. And so within the next couple of days, she put it out there, and I had a 5-week house sit in Bellevue, Washington for that summer. And that was the first one. And then a friend of mine had joined a group called House Carers online, a membership program. And she was house sitting, and then we got a house sit through there. And then I did a house sit for somebody because they were stuck, somebody I'd met, and found out that they were actually belonged to a membership program called Trusted House Sitters. And I'd never heard of them, so we joined them. And now if I want to go somewhere, like to Europe or here in Manitoba, because our family's here, we just look on there, okay, where's the house sit? And apply for it. We tell them who we are and it's what our background is. And if they, will accept it, they got our credentials and everything. We're vetted through the program. So, yeah.
Excellent.
And we don't charge. Amazing. They don't through these. There's no charge, and it's just sometimes they'll gift us something, and then now it's word of mouth, and people say, "Well, we want to give you something." We just leave it up to them.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of trust to find somebody to take care of your place while you're gone and not have to worry. And then there's the whole pet side of it too. We've talked about. There's all that other stuff that happens, but just to know that there's someone in your home while you're far away. Mm-hmm. That's got to be a great feeling to trust somebody with your place.
Well, and you know what? We like when we can. We like to meet the pets before when you're going to Europe and that doesn't happen. But we tell people, we want the animals' approval. And we came to this place and we'd never been before. We do an interview, right, on Zoom or something. Anyways, we came and they say, like, just ignore the dog. Don't put your head down. He tends to nip and stuff. And we're okay that we were both had animals all our lives. And we sat down, and within 3 hours, the dog was glued to Les. And the people said, we need somebody in November. Can you come back in November? So that's how lots of times it happens, that we do multiple times in one place. Very seldom have we done just a one-off.
Yeah. So before all of this house sitting in this chapter of your life, there was a previous chapter where you served our great country. Can you talk a little bit about what you have done in the past?
Yeah, I'm retired from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, where I was an emergency police dispatcher in their communications center. And my husband was an RCMP officer. And so we've lived in 4 different provinces. And when I retired, I contracted back and I worked in the Arctic. So I worked in Nunavut and I worked in the Yukon. And, I love my life there. The ups and downs, like any career, right? Moral issues, trauma issues. Mm-hmm. And that led to what I do now and who I am now.
How did those years serving shape you personally? Like, how are you different from when you go back to, like, when you first enlisted and signed up? What's different about you?
Well, I fell into that job. They needed somebody right away to do maternity leave. And when you're a spouse, you have to be cleared to a certain level too. So it was easy to clear me to bring me in for a 6-month maternity leave. And it totally changed the trajectory of my life because I was surrounded with different people. So I never graduated from high school. I was married young, had my kids young, and followed my husband in his moves. And probably, and it's not a real proud area of my life, I got into that realm of blaming and complaining and gossiping and stuff. And I fell into this job, and I met this amazing woman that was there. She was a spouse as well, but she had a master's degree in education and couldn't get a job because this was Victoria, British Columbia, and she couldn't get a teaching job. And so we worked together, and she said, Janet, go back to school. And I said, no, I'm not smart enough. And she said, oh, yeah, I think you are. And so I didn't know, and this is what I want people to realize, that we don't know a lot of stuff. I didn't know I could write a university entrance exam even though I had never graduated from high school, or that my grades never, because in my day, you had to have an A average. You had to be an A student in order to get into university. And so here I am, 30 years old, and somebody's saying, well, go write this exam. And I'm going like, what? And so I wrote the entrance exam, and I passed, and they said I was writing first-year university level. And that was the start of me taking university courses and really changing my life. It's like when I did my first chapter in a book, she's in British Columbia still, and I had lost track of her. We'd moved to Vancouver, we'd moved to Toronto, and they'd moved around and stuff. And I said to Les, I got to find her because I have to give her this, because this never would have happened without her. And it just takes one person. And of course, Les has always supported me in any crazy idea I've come up with. But yeah, she was the beginning of to where I am today.
It's amazing. Okay, now how does the writing career come into play? When did it start for you to start going, hey, I think I want to start writing?
Well, I started training after my PTSD diagnosis and working with a psychologist, and that there's nothing between your healing with a professional psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever. And she said to me, and this is back in 2003, and it all started because of a car accident, and I thought everything that was going on was car accident, and got help, and she said, no, it had to do with my job. So what happened was she worked with me, and very, very good, gave me some amazing, amazing tools, and then all of a sudden she says one day, you don't have to work with me anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, now what? Because, when we work with someone to heal, there's a void with what you've healed. Like there's a piece that's missing. If you don't fill it with something else, there's a good chance you'll go back to that and fill that void and go back. And I think that's why a lot of people don't heal. They go back to that. And that's not saying that we don't have some issues. That's another area of concern. But so I started, when I finished with her, I started taking courses. And I did personal best seminars, and then I did this, and I did a voiceover course and just different things. And then eventually trained with Jack Canfield and another woman, Marcia Weeder. And when I was in Marcia Weeder's, it was a dream coaching program I did. And she had a speaker on stage, and Katarina Rondeau. And Katarina helped people by creating books, compilations of a story that they want to write. And it was that they advertise, they talk about, is that's like your business card, right? Here, you want to know more about me, here's this, and then there's all these other authors. So that was my first time. That was in 2011, 2012 that I published my first story. And that totally took me sideways because she phoned me up and she said, Janet, I want you to write about journaling. And I said, what? You want me to write about journaling? I don't know anything about journaling. Like I had this career with the force and like, what do you mean you want me to write journaling? I know, but she was persistent, and it's amazing what I found out about myself when I wrote that, because I didn't realize that I did lots of writing because frustration and that, just to get it out. So that's what that was the first one. And then I had an opportunity to do another and another. So, and I built a whole full day workshop around that one chapter. And
wow.
Yeah. And then my own personal, the book that I did in 2021, that I just woke up one day with a title in my head, and that's inspired thought. Jack Canfield always talks about inspired thought. You got to act on your inspired thought. So I was on a group and I said, okay, everybody, who wants to be in a book with me? And the title was The Year the World Paused, Stories of Inspiration and Transformation. And what that book was about was my 2020 with the pandemic was totally different than what I was hearing in the media or what I was hearing other people going through. I was home maybe 15 days out of that year as I traveled to the Arctic. I ended up 5 months in Nunavut, in Iqaluit, because when I got up there, I was supposed to go, I was there for 6 weeks, and then we had house sits to go. But because of everything shut down, all the house sits were canceled, I was already isolated up there, and there was no COVID up there, so they extended my contract. I was up there for 5 months, then came home for a couple of days, and then went up to the Yukon and covered relief up there. So my world was very different. And if I felt that my world was very different, other people's worlds were very different. So that book, the authors that are in that, we all talk about where we were when we heard about the lockdown and that, what we did during that time and how we came out the other end. And one of the benefits, and there are great benefits of what happened as much as tragedies, but the book came out within 6 months. I thought of the title in November, and by June 6th, we had a ebook out. And by the end of August, we had a paperback book on Amazon.
Nice.
And
nice.
And it was really enlightening, because they're from all over the world. I've got one from Ghana, one from Switzerland, 3 from the UK, somebody from Alaska, and the rest from the southern states in Canada. So,
do you think that's a good starting point for a new author that's learning how to write? Instead of trying to take on a project and write your entire book by yourself first time, maybe to write a chapter and collaborate with other authors?
Yeah, that's a really good start. I haven't written a novel. Like that was a compilation, and now I work with some authors that want to write a memoir. And But it's all about, you don't have to start at the beginning. Like one of the things that I always felt, because when I was 16, I was going to write a Harlequin romance, and yeah, you got to start at the beginning. But there was nobody then. That was back in the 60s, late 60s. Like, we knew nothing about it. I grew up in a town of 500 people. We had all our classes were university entrance classes, and there was nothing to encourage you. We didn't have the media we have now or all the tools that we have now. I wasn't considered. I failed reading in grade 5. If you can imagine that. I was too slow of a reader. So the thing is, do you know what? If you want to write, start with journaling. A great book is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she talks about morning pages. And it's just, write your stories down, put them in a file thing, and then, you know what, there's people there that are helping you. There's all kinds of advertising on Facebook and that. Mine, I just had this in me to do this, and I mentored my authors through their book, and so or through their stories, and that was probably the most the most fulfilling thing I could ever do. Like I absolutely loved working with each of the authors, and I brought them together in group, and I brought speakers in and that, and so find someone that believes in you, and if, if you're stuck, talk to me. Like, just talk to me, because there's things that I've learned along the way, but it's because of other people in my life that I got here. One of my friends, we were in the same book together, and we were in the Facebook page, like, because I always have a group. You always go into a group when you're working together on a book. And so she had published a book, and it was a terrible experience for her. So she became a publisher. So right away I had a publisher, a friend. She's an author in the book. And it's a journey. But write your stories down. You know what? You might not publish them. But I talked to so many people. My mom wrote poetry, gave it as gifts. We have none of Mom's poetry. And what a gift that would be. So recently I just met a lady that the same thing. I says, file them someplace, do something with them. That's a gift to have that talent.
It's a legacy piece, right? It goes on long after, right? Yeah.
And don't ever think you can't do it, because let's face it, guys, I wasn't the one that was expected to do anything in life. In school, when they say, what do you expect to do? Well, marry the farmer and have a bunch of kids. Yeah. And, not that that's a bad thing, but it's certainly, I think I might have gone crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, for that young author, then, that new author that's listening, the other part that I know a lot of authors wrestle with is the idea that, like, Janet, who's going to care what I have to say in a book, or my words, or my story? Like, there's so many books out there. There's a new book being published every second. Like, there's this abundance of books. Why would anybody care about my book, my story? If somebody said that to you, Janet, how would you kind of help us to reverse that thinking and make it more of a positive?
Well, for me, if that one person hadn't encouraged me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I want everybody to know you don't have to stay where you think you have to stay. There's so much out there. The other thing is that your story matters. You may think you're the only one that's gone through it, but that's not true. How many millions, billions of people are there in the world? And so, for example, the book that I just came out in a chapter in is called Wounds to Wisdom. That book is healing lives. And it was written, I'm part of a group called The Power of Our Story, and it's first responders, bridge builders, people that support first responders, military, veterans, and that. But you know what we found, and that was because of COVID. That one of the real pluses, this woman, Sarah Corral, took her coffee and conversation to virtual. And that's how I fell into, literally. Sometimes I just don't know how I meet these people, but God intervenes, I think, or the universe. And so I got in this group, but the healing that has gone on in that group, just by people sharing their stories and somebody saying, oh, well, that happened to me. And somebody said, the healing that's gone, but knowing you're not alone. And we know both in Canada and the United States, and I reference the United States because we're so close to the States and a lot of our friends are down there. Our suicide rate is through the roof. But a lot of times, and it's been in my life too, that people I knew and cared for, it's that they lost hope and think they're alone and don't realize that there's somebody else that's been through it and found tools to keep going. And that's what these stories are about. There's 29 authors in it, and it's people's stories, and they're all so different. And yet some of them go back to, you'd think that somebody in the military who's been to war, Iraq, or, Afghanistan, and you think, oh, they must have a horrible story. Do you know what? There's lots of them, their stories are childhood traumas. Childhood traumas that took them into that wanting to be that server, somebody to serve, right? And yet so many stories are similar. One of the people in our book, he felt abandoned by his father. He shared that story, and another person said, oh, well, I did too. It encouraged her to go find her father, her birth father. And it just changes that dynamics. You're not alone. And when somebody doesn't feel they're alone, you can do so much more. And so that's why your story is important, because if you've gone through something like that, or if you've got a story to share, you're not alone. And somebody needs to hear it. There's a saying in the Success Principles, some will, some won't, so what? Someone's waiting. So someone's waiting for your story. Whether you share it in a coffee day or Toastmasters or any service club or sitting next to somebody on an airplane. I went to a thing, I did a presentation years and years and years ago in a small town in Hinton, Alberta. And the night before, there was an entertainer, and he was speaking, and he says, okay, I want people to move into the same table. You're in a group, and here's the question. And this, I can't remember what the question was. And this girl says, well, I can't do really what I want to do because of this, this, and this. And I looked at her, and I says, what do you mean you can't? I said, and by this time I'd been training with Jack Canfield and that. And I said, well, I know somebody, I'll send you a song by this Janice Stanfield. She's a fantastic singer. And so I did. And I don't know, about 6 months later, she found me on Facebook. She sends me a message. She says, Janet, what you said to me changed my life. Do I remember what I said to her? No. And I believe we have that divine intervention that comes through when we're open to it. And we really can. We don't have to know why we said something or what's going on in that person's life. But if we can bring that energy in to just trust that what comes through us is what they need to hear, please share your story. And you know what? If you're struggling, just contact me. It'll be in the show notes, right? My information.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And we'll just have a conversation, because more than anything else, I love to mentor people through stuff like that. I've been there. I did a talk in the United Nations called Against All Odds. Because against all odds, this kid that didn't do well in school, whose friends all went to university and had careers, struggled and struggled and struggled, spoke in the United Nations, wrote a book.
Right.
So if I can do it, so can you. And it doesn't have to be writing a book. It doesn't have to be speaking in the United Nations. Just be what your gift is.
And that tap on the shoulder that happens, you talked about kind of having the whole idea for your book and the title for your book. I think that inspiration taps us on the shoulder, and if we're not receptive, it just moves on to the next person. And the idea just transfers to someone else, right? Mm-hmm. I've had so many people come on my show, and they're like, I watched this movie, and I had the idea for the theme of that movie 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I never did anything with it. And now here it is on the screen. And I'm like, this was the idea I had back in the day. I should have followed through.
Well, and I don't know whether these inspired thoughts come in, and if you don't take them, it goes next. and it goes to the next person. But for me, it started with so many things. I'm very blessed. Whether people want to talk about angels, divine intervention, spirit guides, whatever. If that thought comes to me, like my talk in the United Nations, in 2012, I stood up in a group and said, I want to speak in the United Nations. I did it in 2017. I didn't do anything in between because I didn't think I could do it. But it showed up as a program that I applied for and got into. And so these things, when you speak them, just pay attention. If something shows up, it may not for a long time, but that's a seed planted. Plant that seed, and then somebody will come into your life. You might, like, set me on the journey to seeing a psychologist was a pretty bad car accident I'd been in. But I have to say, there's always a silver lining, and as much as we don't see it at the time, that accident saved my life. There were medical issues they found that I didn't know I had, and I was diagnosed with PTSD, which I didn't even consider that being one of the issues in my life. And so I don't know, as a song or something says, look backward in your life and you can connect the dots.
Yeah.
And, but it's there and you have a choice to make. And whether it's sitting down for a few minutes thinking, why did I think of that? Do I want to do that? And my husband knows, I says, okay, I got to do this now. And, okay, here we go again. But, it's just, I have to live my life that way. And I want to encourage other people to do that. And please, please, please find somebody that will support you, because let's face it, there's lots of naysayers out there, but mostly because they're jealous because of what you're doing. Maybe they wanted to do that and didn't do it.
Yeah. And I think when you're looking at doing something new, like writing a book, that's a great goal to work towards. But one of the things I think we all need to think about when we have a great big goal like that is to figure out where we're starting from. If I get lost on my way to come visit you, and I call you up, Janet, and I'm like, Janet, I'm completely lost. I don't know how to find you.
Yeah.
I can't find the house. One of the first questions you're going to ask me is, well, where are you?
Yeah.
Right? So that you can help me find how to get to your place. And I think as authors, we don't know where we're starting from. We just have this big goal about writing the book, and we get lost in the process of writing the book. But I think if we could identify our starting point and kind of where's our gifts, our talents, our abilities, what's our stories, and that's kind of our starting point, then we can map out how to get from where we are to where we want to end up, right?
And mind maps are wonderful. When I learned about mind mapping, I thought, wow, this is cool. So you want to write a book, put your book name in the center. It doesn't have to be the final book name. Nothing has to be final. Do you know what?
No.
Rip up that piece of paper and throw it away and start over again. Or with computers, you type it up, first draft, second draft, and scrap that. Do you know what? I think we get into that overwhelm of, oh my God, I've got to do this. I have to have so many pages. I have to find this. I have to that. No, you know what? There's people in the world there just waiting to help you. Just waiting. Mm-hmm. And yeah, sometimes it costs you money. Sometimes it just takes one conversation. And, but when we think too big about, oh, geez, that's going to cost me. I've got to find a publisher. I've got to do this. But you know what? There's ways. Like I narrated my book. Again, it was paying attention and showing up. On LinkedIn, this person, I don't know, like I said, she showed up in my world, and she's an audiobook producer, lives in Canada, lives, about 5 hours from where I live, and the joy of house sitting, by the way. I met her. We were coming back from someplace, and I said, can we stop in and meet you? She's in Bragg Creek, Alberta. And I stopped in and saw it. I said, I'm not going to do this from home. I won't set up a what do you call it? Lost my words here. A place to do it. And that's not my forte. And that's another thing. Remember, what isn't yours to do and you don't love, there's somebody else that they love doing it. And so it's in a closet, and I says, well, I'm not going to do it on my own. can I do it in your studio? And she says, yeah, you can come down here. And we talked about cost. And then I went away, and it was a couple months. And I found a house in Cochrane, so really close, 45 minutes there. So for 7 days, I drove down to her studio, and she mentored and coached and edited and produced the audiobook for the year the world paused. Nice. And it was great. But, I took that voiceover course after the car accident, and and I've always liked doing stuff like that. And I had my own radio show online way back before that too, and I absolutely loved it. But this was something so I knew all the stories so intimately that it just came across like that. So it is an audiobook too. But you know what they said? There's a saying, right? When the student is ready, the teacher shows up, and that's the case. Like you and I look back too to where we met. Yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah. It's been a while. It's been amazing.
Yeah. But it was just that charity call we used to go on. And who knew? Like it's just not something. It's not a one-off. You can meet person and not know why you met them, and then years later find them as, oh, hi again. Yeah. Now we know what we're met for.
And I love too that you took that voiceover class without any concept of the fact that you're going to need it for your book in the future.
Yeah.
But it interests you in the moment.
Yeah.
You also were obedient to go and take the course. It could have been like, I'll never use that. But you're like, no, I'm going to do this. I don't know why, but I'm going to do this. Put this in my library of things that I can do and tools that I have. And then someday I'm going to use that.
And the thing is it was, and I'm very, very blessed. I had very good RCMP doctor, because when we're off work, we have to see their doctor too. And he said to me, Janet, do something that has nothing to do with work. You need to get your mind off of that while you heal. And that's why I took the course. And it's something I've always been interested in, but of course didn't know anything. And we bought all the equipment that I never did use. But it took us on that step to leading, like you say, to eventually not having the fear of narrating my own book.
There you go. I really do love, as a reader and as a listener of audiobooks, when the author reads their own book. I know you can hire somebody, which is great. They sound awesome, and these people are great professionals at voicing books. But there's something different when an author reads their own work, and the fact that you pulled this together, and there's just another level of heart and inflection in the voice. It's more personal when the creator of the book voices their own book. I know everybody can't do it, but I enjoy it as a listener.
Well, in this case, like it's other stories, other people's stories, but because I knew them so intimately and read them so many times and knew the authors, I just felt like I could do it. And it was Wounds to Wisdom will be coming out in an audio, and it's going to be very unique because we're all reading our own stories. And then Jenny, my audiobook producer, has been chosen, and she's agreed to put them all together. So she's coaching them through, because they're all over the world too. We got one in Australia, most of them are in the States, and then I'm the only Canadian. And so we've agreed, she's telling us how I'm going to go to her studio and do it. And so it is different because their heart goes into it. And my heart really was in reading that book, and I loved my authors so much.
It's amazing. So I want to kind of get to where people can connect with you, Janet. And you mentioned several times that you're available to kind of coach and help and answer questions and kind of have a virtual coffee with people and chat about their journey. So I would love for people to have access to that. We'll have links in the notes. But can you tell us where you, in all your travels, are most active online so people can then follow up with you?
I'm active on Facebook and LinkedIn. So just my name, Janet Wiszowaty. And people can text me too. I'll give you my phone number. But they have to, and email, it doesn't, but they have to put in how they found me, because lots of text messages, if there's not a message to say how they know me, or if they don't leave a message, I don't respond. With email too, it's just I'm just more active on the others, on LinkedIn and Facebook, so they can just send me a DM.
Sure. Yeah. So when you reach out to Janet, put like next chapter or something in
Yeah.
there. So you heard her through the podcast. That would be great. Janet, so I have to ask, the name of my show is Living the Next Chapter. You have had so many chapters in your life. What is beyond house sitting and taking care of that amazing husband of yours and all of that great stuff? What's coming up? What are you excited about? What's your next chapter showing for you in the future?
I think more books. I now have also 7 authors that I'm mentoring for them to do their books.
Nice.
I want to see their stories come out, and they all 7 of them have great stories, and just to be there for them, just holding space. I'm not writing their books for them. I just encourage them and give them tools that I learned. And also, we've got a new great grandbaby, so we've got 2 great grandchildren that we'll hopefully be spending more time with, and more traveling. I never know where I'm going to meet somebody or what's next. But I plan on being around here for a lot longer. So more trips to Europe. We want to go to Poland in 2026 and stay over there. So yeah, do you know what?
Excellent.
You don't have to stay where you think you have to be. When they've diagnosed with PTSD, people think that's the end of your life. No, it might just be the beginning.
Well, the 2 of you combined, you and your husband, just the fact that you've served your country for so long, it's always been about everyone else. You're the people that would run to trouble when we run from trouble. I've grown up in a world where I had a family friend who worked with the OPP here in Ontario, and he would come by the house, and I was just so in awe of him in his uniform and his vehicles. And that was my memory growing up, is this immense respect for anybody that decides to serve their community in the way that you and your husband have. And I know we have listeners who are serving today all around Canada who are listening to this conversation. And to hear somebody from their ranks and who understands their stories in a unique way, can you just kind of close off and talk to them as they listen and give your words of wisdom and comfort to those who are actively serving still in the RCMP and provincially, and just kind of wrap us up with your thoughts for them specifically on how much caring and community means as you serve?
Yeah, one thing that's really tough for people that are serving right now is the negativity in the world and our loss. We've lost a lot of members, not just to accidents or murder, and I have to say that word because that has been happened, and but also to death by suicide because they're lost. Mm-hmm. Please, please, please. You know what? The 2 people that I was close to that died by suicide, I didn't have any signs of it. And to being a dispatcher, I've taken calls where people have struggled with that, but also completed that action. And you're not alone. Really, you're not alone. For that moment that you feel you need to go that route, please talk to somebody. And but also go and do something else. I've heard one time about somebody in a hotline, a suicide hotline. And I don't know how true this is, but this is a story I heard. And a person phoned in, and the person on the other end says, "Is it snowing where you are?" And the person said, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you have a neighbor that maybe needs their sidewalk shoveled?" He says, "Yeah, I have an elderly neighbor, Netzer. Why don't you go do that and then call me back?" Mm-hmm. So it just changes your state because now, again, you're of service.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're thinking of somebody else. And then maybe that just changed your state just for a little while. If you can change your state just for a little while. You know, people that have had pets. I know one of the guys that I'm friends with, he went to complete the act and his dog bit him on the back of his leg. And it's sort of like a wake-up call.
How dare you? Yeah.
And you know, no matter what happens, there are people that love you. And But more than anything, do it for yourself because there's so much more to live for.
It's great advice, Janet. Thank you so much for making time to do this.
Thank you.
I would love for you to keep us in mind as new projects come up. I know that the audience that listens to the show love to reconnect with past guests and hear about new projects and everything. So down the road, as things happen, please keep us in mind and come back and share more about your journey as an author.
I will, and I have some new authors that I'm going to be sending your way to talk to.
Oh, that's even...
Yes.
That's great. I'm looking forward to that.
That's one of my things that I love doing is connecting people. I'm a chief connector.
Excellent. There you go. Now, if you're listening and you're like, I wonder if Janet was really honest and truthful, that she will take time to talk to me. Yes, she will. And she's a great person to talk to. A very sweet spirit about you, Janet, that I love. So reach out to Janet. The links will be in the show notes. And I know she'd love to do a virtual coffee with you and just listen and kind of give you some direction. She's got some great ideas, great training. And you can tell she still wants to serve and help others. So it continues. So thanks, Janet, for being part of this.
Thanks so much. I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks, David.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun. Well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote with your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.